I watched the rhythm of the heart monitor as my 7-year-old son Jake lay motionless in the ICU bed, his small chest rising and falling with each mechanically assisted breath. While checking my phone to pay another medical bill, my heart stopped. All $500,000 from my accounts was gone. Every penny of the life insurance and savings. A text lit up my screen: family emergency meeting at Mom's house tonight. My sister Tara. I kissed Jake's forehead, promising to return quickly. Walking into my mother's living room 30 minutes later, I found my entire family seated in a semicircle. No one would meet my eyes except my brother-in-law Scott, who sat back with his arms crossed, a slight smirk playing at the corner of his mouth. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice sounding hollow even to my own ears. The silence stretched uncomfortably long. My mother Margaret fiddled with her pearl necklace, my sister Tara stared at the carpet, and my brother Patrick suddenly became very interested in his fingernails. Only Scott maintained eye contact, that unsettling half-smile never leaving his face. "Someone drained my accounts," I said. "Every last cent. $500,000. Gone." My mother gasped unconvincingly. "Oh dear, identity theft is so common these days." "It wasn't identity theft," I said flatly. "The transfers were authorized with my passwords. Passwords only family knew. 2 years ago, when my husband Mark died during his military service overseas, I never imagined I would be here. The insurance money was supposed to secure Jake's future, especially with his medical conditions that required specialized care. Mark had been so careful to make sure we would be provided for." Patrick cleared his throat. "Amity, you have to understand we're family. We share things." "Share? You mean like how I shared the password notebook Mark kept? The one that went missing from my drawer 3 months ago." Tara flinched. Scott finally spoke, his voice smooth and controlled. "We needed it more than you." The words hung in the air like poison. "What did you just say?" I whispered. Scott leaned forward. "Your mother needs retirement money. She can't keep working at her age. Patrick has debts that need to be paid off immediately. Tara and I want to start our business. We all have needs. And my son fighting for his life in the hospital doesn't count as a need." My voice rose with each word. "You have the house insurance from Mark's death," my mother said quietly. "And that nice house. You'll be fine." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You waited until Jake was in the ICU to do this, when I was too distracted to notice." "It was the perfect opportunity," Scott said simply. "We've been planning this for months, waiting for the right time." "Give me back my money," I demanded. "All of it. Now." Tara finally looked up. "We can't. Some of it's already spent." "I'm going to the police," I said, reaching for my phone. Scott laughed. "Go ahead. We'll say you gave us permission. It's 4 of us against 1 of you. Who do you think they'll believe?" As I stood there shaking with rage and disbelief, Patrick slid a folder across the coffee table. "Those are some papers we need you to sign. They transfer the remaining assets to a family trust, for safekeeping." I stared at my family, these strangers wearing familiar faces. In that moment, I realized Mark had tried to warn me about them years ago. He saw what I couldn't: the selfishness, the manipulation. I had defended them, insisted families stuck together. How wrong I'd been. "Jake could die without proper care," I said, my voice breaking. "He'll be fine," my mother said dismissively. "Children are resilient." I grabbed my purse and headed for the door. "Sign the papers," Amity Scott called after me. "Make this easy on yourself, or things will get much worse." I turned back, ice forming in my veins. "No, they'll get worse for you. I promise you that." As I slammed the door behind me, I heard Scott laughing. Little did they know I would make good on my promise, whatever it took. I raced back to the hospital, my mind spinning with betrayal and fear. The steady beep of Jake's monitors normally reassured me, but today they seemed to taunt me with their consistency while my world crumbled. I had barely settled back into the uncomfortable bedside chair when Dr. Wilson entered, his face grim. "Mrs. Harmon, we need to talk. Jake's latest test results are concerning. The head trauma is causing increased intracranial pressure. We need to perform a specialized procedure immediately." "Do it," I said without hesitation. "Whatever he needs." The doctor shifted uncomfortably. "There's an administrative issue. The hospital billing department needs to speak with you first." My stomach dropped as I followed him to a small office where a thin woman with sharp eyes introduced herself as Miss Keller from Financial Services. "Mrs. Harmon, there's a problem with your insurance claim. We've received calls disputing the validity of the policy. What? That's impossible. Nevertheless, someone claiming to be authorized on your accounts has informed us that there's potential insurance fraud. Until this is cleared up, we can't proceed with non-emergency treatments without payment arrangements. This specialized procedure, I said slowly, it falls under non-emergency. Unfortunately, yes. The estimated cost is $120,000. The room seemed to spin. The money my family stole would have covered this easily. My son could suffer permanent brain damage without this procedure, I said, fighting to keep my voice level. I understand, but my hands are tied by hospital policy. I thought of Jake, how excited he had been about his new treehouse. The treehouse Mark's friends had built as a memorial to their fallen brother. I'd been working extra shifts at the architectural firm, trying to catch up on a deadline while juggling single motherhood. When I heard the scream and the thud, the world had shattered. Now it was breaking all over again. As I left the financial office, I nearly collided with a doctor in the hallway. Sorry, I murmured, trying to move past. Wait, she said, touching my arm lightly. You're Jake Harmon's mom, right? I'm Dr. Melissa Harris. I've been consulting on his case. Something in her kind eyes broke through my defenses. Before I knew it, I was telling her everything. The accident, my family's betrayal, the hospital's refusal to proceed with treatment. That's outrageous, she said when I'd finished. Let me see what I can do. I know the chief of neurosurgery personally. As we walked back toward Jake's room, we passed a man sitting alone in the waiting area, his face haggard with worry. Daniel, Dr. Harris called. Any news about Lily? He shook his head. Still waiting. This is Amity Harmon, Dr. Harris said. Her son Jake is in room 304. Daniel stood and offered his hand. Daniel Reeves. My daughter Lily is down the hall. Brain aneurysm. We shared the look that only parents of critically ill children can understand. That mixture of terror, exhaustion, and desperate hope. Daniel used to be with the FBI Financial Crimes Unit before he started his own security firm, Dr. Harris explained. He might have some thoughts on your situation. For the first time since discovering the theft, I felt a flicker of possibility. Later that evening, as I sat beside Jake's bed reading him his favorite story, even though he couldn't hear me, my phone buzzed with a text from my sister. Family meeting tomorrow. Very important. Be there or we'll be forced to take further steps. A chill ran through me. What further steps? I scrolled through my recent calls and saw something that made my blood freeze. 3 calls to Child Protective Services from my mother's home number. As if summoned by my discovery, a hospital social worker appeared at the door. Mrs. Harmon, I'd like to speak with you about some concerns that have been raised about your son's care. I gripped the bed rail to steady myself. They weren't just taking my money. They were trying to take my son. Mrs. Harmon, the social worker, a woman named Andrea Sampson, repeated. Could we speak privately? I nodded numbly, following her to a small consultation room after kissing Jake's forehead. I'll get right to the point, she said once we were seated. We've received some concerning reports about the circumstances of Jake's accident and your fitness as a parent. My jaw clenched. From family members who are currently embezzling money meant for his care. Her eyebrows rose slightly. That's a serious allegation. So, is questioning my parenting based on spiteful lies? I took a deep breath. Miss Sampson, my son, fell from a treehouse while I was working. It was a terrible accident that could have happened to anyone. His father died serving our country 2 years ago, and I've been doing everything possible to give Jake a good life. The people making these claims stole $500,000 from accounts designated for Jake's care and future. Something in my voice or eyes must have convinced her because her demeanor softened. I understand. Unfortunately, I still need to conduct an assessment. Standard procedure. Of course, I said, reaching for my phone. Would you mind if I record our conversation for my records? She hesitated, then nodded. This was my first small victory, beginning to document everything. After the interview, I found Daniel in the cafeteria staring into a cup of coffee. He looked up as I approached. Dr. Harris mentioned your situation, he said. I hope you don't mind. I slid into the seat across from him. Actually, I could use your expertise. Over the next hour, Daniel explained how to legally gather evidence. Bank records, phone records, texts, emails, anything that shows the money transfers and your family's intent. They used my late husband's password notebook, I explained. Mark was always meticulous about security. Military habit, Daniel nodded. My brother was the same way. He helped me set up a secure cloud account to store evidence and showed me how to record conversations legally. Wisconsin is a one-party consent state for recordings, he explained. As long as you're part of the conversation, you can record it without telling the others. That night, I called Ryan Walsh, one of Mark's closest friends from his unit. Ryan had always kept in touch, checking in on Jake and me. Those bastards, he growled when I explained what happened. Mark would be furious. I need help, Ryan. They're not just taking my money, they're trying to take Jake. The guys and I will be there tomorrow, he promised. No one messes with our brother's family. The next day, before heading to the dreaded family meeting, I met with the hospital administrators. Doctor. Harris had worked a minor miracle convincing them to proceed with Jake's treatment while the financial issues were sorted out. We're not heartless, the chief administrator assured me. We just need to follow protocols. I thanked them, feeling a weight lift slightly. At least Jake would get the care he needed. On my way out, I literally bumped into Daniel again. Sorry, I mumbled. No problem, he said, steadying me. How's Jake? They're doing the procedure tomorrow. I hesitated, then asked, How's Lily? A genuine smile spread across his tired face. Better. She opened her eyes this morning. We shared a moment of relief before I remembered my next challenge. I'm meeting my family in an hour. Following your advice about gathering evidence, Daniel reached into his pocket and handed me what looked like a pen. Recording device. Better quality than your phone. Just click the top to start. At my mother's house, I was greeted by the same tableau as before, but with one addition: folders of documents spread across the coffee table. I clicked the pen as I entered. Scott stood up, all business. We've prepared the necessary paperwork to resolve this situation amicably. All you need to do is sign. What exactly am I signing? I asked, not touching anything. My mother spoke up. Just some things to protect the family assets, and a statement about Jake's care. I flipped through the documents, my legal training from my brief time in paralegal work before architecture school kicking in. What I saw made me physically ill. They wanted me to sign over my house, withdraw the police report I'd filed that morning, and agree to a family evaluation of my parenting. Where did you get these legal documents? I asked, noticing the professional formatting. Tara shifted uncomfortably. Scott knows a lawyer. I bet he did. Probably the same shady one who was helping them hide the stolen money. I've been doing some research, I said casually. Interesting thing about bank transfers. They leave quite a trail. Scott's smirk faltered for the first time. Another interesting fact. Scott has quite a history. Fraud charges in 3 states. You all knew that, right? My mother gasped. Tara looked at her husband in confusion. Patrick stared at his shoes. That's a lie, Scott snarled. Is it because I have the court records? And guess what else I found? Scott tried to access Jake's hospital room when I wasn't there. Hospital security has it on camera. The atmosphere in the room changed instantly. Tara turned to Scott. You said you were going to the cafeteria. I pressed my advantage. Mom, did you know Scott changed your will? The copy I saw removes Jake entirely, despite your promise that the family home would go to him. I never changed my will, she protested. Scott stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. She's making things up to avoid her responsibilities. But a seed of doubt had been planted. I could see it in my mother's eyes and Tara's posture, even in Patrick's nervous glance at Scott. Sign the papers, Scott insisted, pushing them toward me. I gathered my purse and stood. I need time to review these with my lawyer. I'll be in touch. As I left, I heard the beginning of what would become a family civil war. Accusations, denials, and the first cracks in their united front against me. In my car, I clicked off the pen recorder and let out a long breath. The first battle was over. The war was just beginning. Jake's procedure went well. Dr. Harris told me the intracranial pressure had decreased significantly, and he was showing positive responses to stimuli. For the first time in days, I allowed myself to feel a flicker of hope. Daniel stopped by with a teddy bear for Jake and coffee for me. How did the family meeting go? I showed him the recording. He listened intently, his professional demeanor taking over. This is good. We've got enough to start tracking the money trail. He glanced at me. If you're sure you want to pursue this. They stole from my son while he was fighting for his life, I said. Then they tried to take him from me. What would you do? Daniel's face hardened as he glanced at a photo of his own daughter. Everything in my power to stop them. Over the next few days, a peculiar rhythm developed. I'd spend mornings with Jake, afternoons working with Daniel on tracking the financial web my family had created, and evenings dealing with the constant barrage of threats and manipulation from my family. They've split the money between 12 different accounts, Daniel explained, showing me a diagram he'd created. Some in their names, some in shell companies. Your brother-in-law knows what he's doing. Can we recover it? With proper legal action, yes. But we need more evidence of intent and coordination. I called Detective Lauren Wright, who specialized in family financial crimes. After reviewing our evidence, she agreed to open an investigation but warned me it would take time. Financial crimes aren't as flashy as homicides, she explained. They don't get the same resources. My son needs that money now, I insisted. I understand, but we have to follow procedure. Her voice softened. For what it's worth, I've seen a lot of family betrayals in my career, and this ranks among the worst. Ryan arrived with 2 other members of Mark's unit, Chris and Jason. Their presence provided a shield against my family's increasingly desperate attempts to force me to sign away my rights. Mark would have our asses if we didn't protect you and Jake, Chris said, setting up a rotation so someone was always at the hospital. They tried to enter the hospital again yesterday, Jason reported. Security stopped them, but they claimed they were immediate family with visitation rights. The hospital had been wonderful, upgrading their security protocols to ensure only approved visitors could access Jake's room. But I knew my family wouldn't stop. Ryan, who had since joined the FBI, made some calls. Interstate fraud, he muttered. That puts this in federal jurisdiction, especially with Scott's prior convictions. Every day Jake showed small improvements. His fingers would twitch when I held his hand. His brain activity increased during story time. Dr. Harris was cautiously optimistic. Children's brains have remarkable plasticity, she explained. Every positive sign is significant. My mother called daily, her messages vacillating between guilt trips and threats. We're still family, Amity. We can work this out. If you keep pushing, we'll have no choice but to take legal action regarding Jake. I saved every voicemail, added it to our evidence file, and carried on. The hospital ethics committee called a meeting after my family filed a formal complaint about Jake's care. They claimed I was making medical decisions that weren't in his best interest. The meeting was set in a large conference room. I arrived to find my entire family already seated with a lawyer I didn't recognize. Scott looked confident, as if victory was assured. Dr. Harris sat beside me along with Daniel, who had offered to come as a character witness. Detective Wright stood unobtrusively in the corner. The committee chair, Dr. Bennett, began by outlining the complaint. My family's lawyer presented their case. I was emotionally unstable, making poor decisions, refusing family support during a crisis. When it was my turn to speak, I stood calmly. My son Jake is receiving excellent care from this hospital's world-class team. Every decision I've made has been in consultation with his doctors and with his best interest as my only consideration. The family members making these complaints have stolen $500,000 from accounts designated for Jake's care. They are currently under investigation for fraud and financial elder abuse regarding my mother's accounts as well. I presented documentation of Jake's improvement under the current treatment plan letters from his regular pediatrician attesting to my parental care and the preliminary findings from Detective Wright's investigation. This complaint isn't about Jake's well-being, I concluded. It's an attempt to control me through my most vulnerable point, my love for my son. The committee deliberated for only 15 minutes before dismissing the complaint entirely and affirming my role as Jake's medical decision-maker. As we left, Scott caught up to me in the hallway. This isn't over. We're family. We know everything about you. There's nowhere you can hide. Daniel stepped between us. That sounds remarkably like a threat, Mr. Donovan. Would you like to clarify your statement for the detective standing right behind you? Scott's face darkened as he noticed Detective Wright. He stalked away without another word. That night I received a text from my brother Patrick. Need to talk. Alone. Important. Tomorrow morning, coffee shop across from hospital, 8 a.m. Daniel advised caution. Could be a setup. Or he's having second thoughts, I countered. Patrick was always the softest of them. Ryan insisted on accompanying me, but agreed to sit at a separate table. The next morning, Patrick arrived, looking haggard with dark circles under his eyes and a nervousness I hadn't seen since we were kids, and he'd broken Mom's favorite vase. They've lost their minds, he whispered, sliding into the booth. Scott's talking about selling Mom's house out from under her. He's got her convinced she's going to live with him and Tara, but I found paperwork for a retirement community. the cheapest one in the state. I listened silently as Patrick unraveled the larger conspiracy. How Scott had manipulated everyone, how the money was disappearing faster than could be explained by the supposed family needs. I never wanted to hurt Jake, Patrick said, tears welling in his eyes. I was desperate with these gambling debts. Scott said he'd help if I helped him. I didn't know he was planning to take everything. Help me fix this, I said, reaching for his hand. It's not too late. Patrick squeezed my hand. I'll get you proof of where the money went. Meet me tonight at Mom's. Everyone will be there for dinner. I'll make sure of it. We can confront Scott together. For the first time in weeks, I felt a surge of hope that my family might not be entirely lost to me. Perhaps there was a path to healing after all. I spent the day at Jake's bedside reading his favorite stories and telling him about his father's adventures. The nurses reported increased brain activity whenever I spoke, which they assured me was a very positive sign. He's fighting his way back to you, the kindest nurse, Sophia told me with a squeeze of my shoulder. Daniel stopped by during his daughter Lily's physical therapy session. Patrick reached out to you. That's promising. I explained Patrick's offer to help expose Scott's broader scheme. He seemed genuinely remorseful. Daniel's expression remained cautious. Just be careful. Family loyalty runs deep even when it's misplaced. Patrick and I were always close growing up, I said. He protected me from neighborhood bullies, taught me to ride a bike when Dad was too busy. There's good in him. I hope you're right, Daniel replied. But take precautions. Wear the recording pen. Have backup nearby. Ryan agreed to position himself and Chris near my mother's house during the family dinner. We won't interfere unless you signal, but we'll be there in seconds if needed. At 6 o'clock, I kissed Jake goodbye and promised to return with good news. Dr. Harris assured me she would personally check on him throughout the evening. The drive to my childhood home felt surreal. The familiar streets and landmarks stood in stark contrast to how foreign my own family had become. The house itself, a large Victorian that had been in our family for generations, looked exactly as it always had, warm lights glowing from within. How could something so unchanged on the outside contain such betrayal within? Patrick met me on the porch. Everyone's here, he whispered. Scott's been drinking. Be prepared. The atmosphere inside was tense. My mother fussed unnecessarily with dinner preparations, while Tara set the table with mechanical precision. Scott lounged in my father's old chair, tumbler of whiskey in hand, watching me with calculating eyes. The prodigal daughter returns, he said, raising his glass in mock toast. I came to talk to my family, I replied evenly. All of my family. Dinner was a painful affair of stilted conversation and long silences. Finally, as my mother served coffee, Patrick cleared his throat. I think we need to reconsider our approach to Amity's situation, he began. Things have gone too far. Scott's head snapped toward Patrick. What are you talking about? The money, the legal threats, trying to take custody of Jake. Patrick's voice strengthened. It's wrong, all of it. My mother set down her coffee cup with a clatter. Patrick, we discussed this. It's for the best. Is it for the best to steal from Amity while her son is fighting for his life? Patrick challenged. Is it for the best to try to take her child away, to threaten her, to lie to her? Enough. Scott slammed his hand on the table. You're just having an attack of conscience. It will pass. No, it won't, Patrick insisted. And there's more, isn't there, Scott? Tell them about the retirement home brochures. Tell them about the sale listing you've prepared for this house. A heavy silence fell over the table. My mother turned to Scott, confusion etching deeper lines in her face. What is he talking about? Nonsense, Scott snapped. He's trying to distract from his own guilt. Show them the recording, Patrick. My heart sank as Patrick's face fell. I'm sorry, Amity. I really am. He pulled out his phone and played a recording of our coffee shop conversation. But Scott's triumphant expression faded as the recording continued past what I remembered saying. She's gathering evidence against all of us, my voice said on the recording. The FBI is involved now. They know about your gambling debts to those mob guys. They'll lock you up for years unless you help me frame Scott. I stared at Patrick in disbelief. I never said that. Voice manipulation software, Daniel had warned me about this. Surprisingly easy to do with the right apps. Scott stood up, straightening his jacket. You see, she's been playing us against each other all along, trying to avoid responsibility for her own failures. That's not my voice, I insisted. Or at least not what I actually said. Doesn't matter, Scott said smoothly. What matters is we have a solution that works for everyone. He pulled out a folder of documents. Sign these tonight, Amity. Transfer the house to the family trust, agree to supervised visitation with Jake, and we'll consider returning a portion of the funds. 50,000 perhaps. And if I refuse, then we'll proceed with the evidence we've gathered showing your unfitness as a parent. Patrick's recording is just the beginning. We have testimony from neighbors about your erratic behavior after Mark's death. Documentation of your work absences the circumstances of Jake's accident. Child Services takes these things very seriously. I looked at my family, my mother avoiding my gaze, Tara staring resolutely at her hands, Patrick looking miserable but silent. Only Scott seemed energized by the conflict, his eyes bright with the thrill of what he perceived as imminent victory. You're asking me to sign away my son's home and accept limited access to him in exchange for a fraction of what you stole from him. I'm offering you a way out of a very difficult situation, Scott countered. One that could drag on for years in the courts. Years during which you'll be under constant scrutiny. Years during which Jake will be caught in the middle. I stood up slowly. I need to use the bathroom. To think. In the hallway bathroom, I sent a quick text to Ryan, still okay. Gathering more evidence. Stand by. When I returned to the dining room, I noticed something I'd overlooked before, a stack of financial documents on the sideboard. As Scott continued outlining his demands, I casually moved closer to examine them. What I saw made me freeze. Bank statements showing transfers from my mother's accounts to offshore holdings, property assessments of the family home, and most damning of all, a draft sales contract for the house with only my mother's signature needed and a purchase agreement for a one-bedroom unit at Sunny Pines Budget Retirement Community. Scott wasn't just stealing from me. He was systematically draining everyone, setting himself up to disappear with everything. What are you looking at? Scott demanded, suddenly at my elbow. I turned to face my family. Did any of you actually see where the money went? My money? Mom's money? Have you checked your own accounts lately, Tara? Scott grabbed my arm roughly. Sign the papers. Let go of me, I said quietly. Not until you sign. Scott Patrick started half rising from his chair. Stay out of this, Scott snapped. She signs, or she loses everything. I looked directly into his eyes. I already have copies of all of this. I lied smoothly, nodding toward the financial documents. The police have them too. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Scott's face. Even if you had evidence he recovered quickly, no one would believe you over all of us. We're her family. You're just the grieving widow who couldn't cope. I wrenched my arm free. We'll see about that. What are you going to do? Scott laughed. Call the police. They'll take one look at our documented concerns and place Jake in protective custody pending investigation. This isn't right, Patrick said, standing up finally. Mom, Tara, can't you see what he's doing to us, to our family? Shut up, you spineless fool, Scott snarled. If it weren't for me, you'd be floating in the river with concrete shoes for what you owe. The truth was finally emerging, ugly and unavoidable. Mom, I pleaded, turning to Margaret. Look at what he's planning. He's selling your home out from under you. My mother finally met my eyes, conflict evident in her expression. He said it was necessary for financial restructuring. He's stealing from all of us, I insisted. Check your accounts. See for yourself. Tara pulled out her phone, fingers trembling as she logged into their joint account. The color drained from her face. Scott, why is our savings account empty? Temporary transfer, he said dismissively. For the business opportunity I told you about. What business opportunity? She demanded. You've been saying that for months with nothing to show for it. Scott's face hardened as he saw his control slipping. Enough games. Sign the papers now. Amity or I promise you'll regret it. Are you threatening me? I asked, making sure the recording pen in my pocket captured every word. I'm stating facts. Even if you had evidence against us, no one would believe you over all of us. His voice was cold, confident. I gathered my purse, heart pounding. This conversation is over. I'm leaving. Sign the papers, Scott shouted, his composure finally cracking. No, I said firmly. And I'm warning you all. Consequences are coming. Scott laughed, the sound harsh and mocking. What are you going to do about it? I walked toward the door, turned back one last time. More than you can imagine. The next morning brought unexpected joy. Jake opened his eyes. He couldn't speak yet around the breathing tube, but his gaze focused on me, recognition clear in those familiar blue eyes so like his father's. "Hey, sweetheart," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "I've missed you so much." Dr. Harris was cautiously optimistic. "His responses are stronger than expected. We'll run more tests, but this is very encouraging." I spent hours just holding Jake's hand, talking to him, softly explaining that he was safe and getting better. Each squeeze of his fingers renewed my determination to fight for our future. When Daniel visited bringing a stuffed dinosaur for Jake's growing collection, he found me with fresh resolve. "We need to end this now," I told him. "Jake's waking up. He needs stability, not an ongoing family war." "I've been working with Detective Wright," Daniel replied. "We've traced most of the money. Scott's been systematically draining all the accounts, including your mother's retirement fund and Tara's savings. Ryan said his FBI contacts are building a case for wire fraud." Daniel nodded. "The interstate transfers push this into federal territory. They're preparing warrants, but these things take time." "Jake doesn't have time," I said. "He needs security now." After Daniel left, I called Detective Wright. "I want to confront them one more time. Give them a final chance to do the right thing." "That's risky," she warned. "Scott Donovan has a history of escalation when cornered. I'll have backup. And it might be the only way to get my mother and sister to see the truth before it's too late." We planned carefully. Ryan and his team would be nearby. Detective Wright would be parked down the street, ready to intervene if needed. Daniel insisted on being there too, though I asked him to wait outside. "I've invested too much in this outcome to miss the finale," he said, with a wry smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. I arranged the meeting through Patrick, who was desperately trying to make amends. "Everyone will be there at 8, he confirmed. "Mom's making pot roast like it's a normal family dinner." "Nothing about this is normal," I replied. That evening I kissed Jake goodbye, promising to return with good news. He was more responsive now, tracking me with his eyes, squeezing my hand in response to questions. "I'm fighting for us, sweetheart," I whispered. "For our future." The drive to my mother's house felt different this time. I wasn't going as a victim seeking understanding, but as a force demanding justice. The family was gathered in the living room when I arrived, the pretense of a normal dinner, apparently abandoned. Scott sat in my father's chair like a king holding court. My mother perched nervously on the sofa beside Tara, who looked pale and drawn. Patrick stood by the window, tension evident in every line of his body. "You wanted to talk," Scott said. "So talk." I remained standing, centering myself before speaking. "I'm here to give you one last chance to make this right. Return my money. All of it. Drop the custody threats. End this now." Scott laughed. "Or what? Or I'll be forced to take action that will destroy this family forever." "Always so dramatic," my mother sighed. "Just like your father." "This isn't drama, Mom. This is reality. Scott has stolen not just from me, but from all of you. He's planning to sell this house and put you in a budget retirement home while he disappears with the money." More lies, Scott dismissed. "Margaret, don't listen to her." I turned to my sister. "Tara, have you found out where your savings went yet? The college fund for Ben and Emma. Have you checked?" Tara's eyes flicked to Scott, uncertainty clear in her expression. "She's trying to turn us against each other," Scott insisted. "This is what she does." "No," I said firmly. "This is what you do. You manipulate, you isolate, you take." I laid out everything we had discovered. The multiple accounts, the offshore transfers, the property listings, the retirement home applications. "He's been planning this for years," I explained. Mark saw it. He tried to warn me about Scott, but I didn't listen. I thought family meant something. "It does mean something," my mother insisted. "It means standing together. Even when one of us is hurting all the others," I challenged. "Look at the evidence, Mom. Really look." Patrick stepped forward, placing a folder on the coffee table. "It's all here, Mom. Bank records, property listings, everything Amity's talking about." I found copies in Scott's briefcase. Scott was on his feet instantly. "You went through my things. You ungrateful little parasite." "I had to know the truth," Patrick said, standing his ground for perhaps the first time in his life. The facade was crumbling. Scott looked from face to face, seeing the doubt growing. "Fine," he snapped. "So I moved some money around." "So what?" "That's what financial management is. I was protecting our interests." "By emptying our accounts," Tara asked, voice shaking. "By selling Mom's house without telling her." "Necessary sacrifices for the bigger picture," Scott insisted. "You think small. I think big." And what about the $500,000 you stole from my son? I asked quietly. Collateral damage, he said dismissively. The boy probably won't even make it. The room fell silent. Even Scott seemed to realize he had gone too far. Get out of my house, my mother said, her voice trembling with rage. Margaret, be reasonable, Scott backpedaled. You've been stealing from us. From all of us, she turned to Tara. Check your accounts. Now. Tara pulled out her phone, fingers flying over the screen. The color drained from her face. It's all gone. Everything. Even the kids' college funds. Temporary transfers, Scott insisted. For the investments I told you about. What investments? Tara demanded. Show me. Show me right now. Scott's expression hardened. This is why I don't include any of you in the financial decisions. You panic over nothing. I stepped closer to him. It's not nothing. It's theft. It's fraud. And in my case, it's something worse. You took advantage of a child's medical crisis to steal his future. Scott moved with unexpected speed, grabbing my arm and twisting it painfully behind my back. You've ruined everything with your meddling, he hissed in my ear. Scott, Tara screamed. Let her go. Stay back, he warned. All of you. This ends now my way. There are people outside, I said calmly, despite the pain shooting through my shoulder. Federal agents. Police. They're waiting for my signal. You're bluffing, he snarled, but I felt his grip loosen slightly. Am I? Why don't you check the street? The black SUV at the corner. The sedan across from the driveway. They're all here for you, Scott. He shoved me away roughly. I stumbled but kept my feet. Even if you had evidence, he said, retreating toward the study where I knew my father had kept a gun, no one would believe you over all of us. That's where you're wrong, I replied, pulling out the recording pen. They'll believe this. And the dozen other recordings I've made. And the bank records. And the forged documents with your fingerprints all over them. Scott lunged for the pen. I dodged aside, but he kept coming, face contorted with rage. You've destroyed everything I built, he shouted. Years of planning ruined because you couldn't just go along with the program. Patrick tried to intervene, but Scott shoved him aside with shocking force, sending him crashing into an end table. Stop this, my mother cried. Stop it now. It's too late, Scott snarled, advancing on me again. Much too late. I backed toward the door, hand in my pocket on my phone. Last chance, Scott. Surrender now, return the money, and maybe you'll get leniency. He laughed a wild, unhinged sound. What are you going to do about it? You're nothing. A grieving widow playing detective. My fingers pressed the emergency signal button on my phone. I warned you consequences were coming. The front door exploded inward with a thunderous boom, the solid oak splintering as FBI agents poured into the house, weapons drawn. Everybody down, hands where we can see them. Scott froze his face, draining of color. Behind him, my mother and Tara stared in shocked silence. Patrick slowly raised his hands. Ryan strode through the broken door, badge held high. Scott Donovan, you're under arrest for wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. As agents secured, Scott Detective Wright entered, moving directly to my side. Are you all right? I nodded, watching, as my brother-in-law's empire of lies collapsed around him. You can't prove anything, Scott was shouting as they handcuffed him. It's her word against mine. Actually, Ryan said we have quite a bit more than that. Your offshore accounts aren't nearly as well hidden as you thought. As they led Scott out, my mother sank onto the sofa, looking suddenly old and frail. What have we done? She whispered. I knelt beside her, taking her hands in mine. You let yourselves be manipulated by a con man, but it's not too late to make it right. Tara was sobbing quietly, Patrick's arm around her shoulders. The children's college funds, she kept saying. Everything we saved. We'll find it, I promised. All of it. And we'll rebuild what we can't recover. Detective Wright approached with a gentle smile. We've already frozen the accounts we've identified. The recovery process can begin as early as tomorrow. As the chaos settled into a quieter aftermath of statements and explanations, I stepped outside for a moment of air. Daniel was waiting on the porch. Quite an entrance, he said with a slight smile. Ryan always did have a flair for the dramatic. I leaned against the porch railing, suddenly exhausted. It's really over. The beginning of the end, at least, Daniel corrected. Financial cases take time to fully resolve. But Jake's money should be recovered within weeks. The FBI is expediting everything given the circumstances. I let out a long breath, feeling the weight of weeks of fear and anger begin to lift. I need to get back to the hospital. Jake will be wondering where I am. Daniel hesitated, then offered his hand. I'll drive you. You've had enough for one night. I took his hand, grateful for the support, for the friendship that had grown from our shared hospital vigils. Thank you, I said simply. For everything. He squeezed my hand gently. That's what friends do. They show up when it matters most. As we walked to his car, I glanced back at my childhood home, now swarming with federal agents. The foundation of my life had been shaken to its core, but somehow I felt stronger than before, ready to rebuild what truly mattered. 6 months passed in a blur of recovery. Jake's physical healing, our financial restoration, and the slow mending of family bonds torn apart by betrayal. Jake came home from the hospital after 8 weeks of intensive therapy. His recovery astonished even the most optimistic doctors. Children truly are resilient, their bodies and spirits capable of remarkable healing. Mom, watch this, he called from the backyard on a crisp autumn afternoon. I stepped onto the porch to see him carefully climbing the ladder to his rebuilt treehouse. My heart lurched, but I forced myself to smile encouragingly. Be careful, sweetheart. I'm always careful now, he replied solemnly. Dr. Harris said my brain needs extra protection. Dr. Harris had become a regular visitor to our home, checking on Jake's progress and eventually becoming a dear friend. She marveled at his recovery, but reminded us that healing takes time and patience. The legal proceedings against Scott moved with surprising efficiency, thanks to Ryan's FBI connections and the interstate nature of the crimes. When faced with the mountain of evidence, Scott accepted a plea deal. 15 years for fraud, identity theft, and exploitation of a vulnerable adult, my mother. Patrick testified against him, receiving immunity in exchange for his full cooperation. He entered a gambling addiction program and slowly began rebuilding his life and our relationship. I'll never forgive myself, he told me one evening as we sat on my porch watching Jake play. Maybe not, I replied. But I forgive you. That's a start. My mother and Tara had a longer road. The betrayal cut deeper for them, their trust more completely shattered. Scott had isolated them for years, controlling their finances, their social connections, even their perspectives on family loyalty. I was blind, my mother admitted during one of our tentative reconciliation coffees. I let him turn me against my own daughter, my own grandson. He was very good at what he did, I reminded her. And we all wanted to believe in family unity. The FBI recovered most of the stolen money, though some had been spent or hidden beyond recovery. With Daniel's help, I established the Harmon Family Trust, a properly managed fund for Jake's medical care and future education, with ironclad legal protections. But money was only part of the healing. The deeper work was rebuilding trust and creating a new definition of family. On Jake's 8th birthday, 3 months after his return home, I invited my mother Tara and her children and Patrick to celebrate. Daniel came too, along with Dr. Harris, Ryan and his wife, and several other friends who had supported us through the crisis. Watching Jake blow out his candles, surrounded by people who truly cared for him, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced since Mark's death. Later that evening, as the party wound down, Daniel helped me clean up the kitchen. You've built something beautiful here, he said, nodding toward the living room where Jake was showing his grandmother his new science kit. We've built it, I corrected. I couldn't have done any of this without you. He smiled, that quiet, steady smile that had become a cornerstone of my new life. You're stronger than you know, Amity. Maybe, but I'm learning that strength isn't about standing alone. It's about knowing when to reach for help. Daniel's hand found mine across the counter. Lily asks about Jake every day. She's invited him to her birthday party next month. He'd love that I said, not pulling my hand away. Our friendship had evolved gradually, neither of us rushing what was developing between us. Two single parents who had found each other in the most desperate of circumstances, building something hopeful from the ruins of our previous lives. 1 year after Jake's accident, I launched the Harmon Foundation for Medical Family Support, an organization providing financial guidance, legal assistance, and emotional support to parents of critically ill children. No one should have to fight a financial battle while their child is fighting for their life, I explained at the foundation's first fundraiser. To my surprise, my mother donated the family home to serve as the foundation's headquarters, a Victorian beacon of hope in a neighborhood close to the children's hospital. It's time this house sheltered people who truly need it, she said at the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Tara joined the foundation's board, bringing her organizational skills and newfound passion for family advocacy. Patrick volunteered his weekends, particularly connecting with fathers struggling with the financial pressures of childhood medical crises. Even in prison, Scott continued to cast a shadow. He filed appeals, made accusations, and attempted to manipulate the system as he had once manipulated our family. But his power was broken, his words falling on deaf ears now that the truth was fully exposed. Today, as I sit in Jake's treehouse beside him, watching him read a book about space exploration, I realize how far we've come. "Mom," he says, suddenly looking up from his book, "are we still a family? Even though Uncle Scott is in prison and everyone lives in different houses now." I brush his hair back from his forehead, tracing the faint scar that remains from his surgery. Family isn't just about who you're related to or who lives in your house. It's about who stands beside you when you need them most. Like Daniel and Lily, and Dr. Harris, and Uncle Ryan. Exactly like them. Family is the people who love you enough to fight for you, to show up when it matters, to help you heal when you're hurting. Jake considers this, his young mind processing concepts some adults never grasp. "I think I have a bigger family now than before my accident." "I think you're right," I say, hugging him close. And that's the most valuable thing we could have gained from all of this. As we climb down from the treehouse, I see Daniel's car pulling into the driveway, Lily waving excitedly from the passenger seat. Jake races to meet them, his recovery so complete that sometimes I have to remind myself how close we came to losing everything. My phone buzzes with a text from my mother. "Dinner still on for Sunday, made Jake's favorite apple pie." These Sunday family dinners have become our new tradition. Healing gatherings where we practice being honest, being vulnerable, being family in a healthier way. I text back, "We'll be there. Daniel and Lily too." The family we choose can be stronger than the family we're born into. Sometimes the greatest act of love is setting boundaries that protect what matters most. And sometimes the deepest healing comes after the most painful betrayal, when we find the courage to rebuild with truth as our foundation. Have you ever had to redefine what family means to you? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. If this resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to hear more stories about overcoming family challenges. Share this with someone who might need to hear that they're not alone in facing family difficulties. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you strength and healing in whatever battles you might be fighting.